Are Pop-Up Parade L sizes relevant in 2025? Welcome to part 2 of our 3-part mini-series on Pop-Up Parade, where we take an in-depth look at the brand and some of their product lines to determine if it's worth your attention and money. If you have not seen part 1, I highly recommend it as we look at the brand itself and the regular size pups. If you don't want to be spoiled, skip this part in 3, 2, 1. TLDR, if the character you're looking at has prize figure variants, we recommend looking into the prize figures and probably skipping the Pop-Up Parade. We feel the true value of regular-sized pop-up parades is from the niche characters that other companies don't represent, such as Basil here from Omori. Outside of that, the quality simply doesn't hold up for the amount of money you're spending. We are very intrigued by the Pop-Up Parade L size because, at least on paper, they don't have any direct competition. And as long as the quality holds up and is better than the regular size that we see here, it could be the sweet spot for the brand. So let's go ahead and pass this off to Kohai for that in-depth review you've come to expect from us.
Hey Senpai, it's your Kohai, and today we're going to start part 2 of our Pop-Up Parade mini-series, which is going to be about the Pop-Up Parade Ls. We're hoping this is the sweet spot for Pop-Up Parade since they seem to be competing in a class of their own. So far, all Pop-Up Parade Ls cost 8,800 yen, which puts them between the price of prize figures and traditional scales. In Japan, prize figures cost sub 3,000 yen, but start to get closer to the 6,000 yen mark here in the West. It's hard to determine the average price for a scale figure, but for sake of argument, we went to AmiAmi and took the average price of the latest 50 Bishoujo 1/8 and 1/7 scales up for pre-order, which ended up being 24,447 yen, which is much higher than I thought it was going to be. What makes Pop-Up Parade special is that they're in this price bracket using popular IPs. You see, their only real competition right now is Chinese companies that are in the 7,000 to 9,000 yen range that offer a strong value with a quality product, but they're primarily relegated to less popular IPs, such as doujin artists or gacha games. Case in point, we have AniMester's Florence from Girls Frontline and our good friend Lulumu from BearPanda, which we will compare to the Pop-Up Parade L later in this video. We chose these because there is a new piece of information that could shake up the dynamic and really put Pop-Up Parade at a disadvantage, so stay tuned to learn more. We talked about Pop-Up Parades in the first video, but to give a little bit of a refresher, Pop-Up Parade Ls do not have a set scale, but instead a target height of 20 to 24 centimeters, which is close to a 1/8 scale, sometimes a 1/7 scale, according to Good Smile. The first Pop-Up Parade L to release was, of course, again a Hatsune Miku, which released at 8,800 yen in October of 2022. So far, the price has not increased, but we'll see what happens in the future. A reminder, this video series could not be possible without Lonely Pillow. With that, let's dive right in. Today we're taking a look at the Pop-Up Parade L of Magia Baiser. She's a non-scale with an MSRP of 8,800 yen and was released in late November of 2024. I really hope this figure turns out well because I really like the character. And based off of the prototype photos, in my opinion, this is the best figure of her in the current market, so I have really high hopes. Let's start by taking a look at the box. Taking a look at the box, we've definitely downgraded it from the standard size box, as there's no clear window and so we can't see inside. It still has a very contemporary design though, and each figure still has its own color scheme, hers being purple for her hair, purple for her outfit, and gold for her accents. On the back we have prototype photos of her in different angles and an L. On the side we have another photo of her with the color scheme. On the front we have a very large photo of her with the Good Smile logo, and on the other side we again have a picture of her with yet another L. They're really trying to sell us on this L size, so I hope it doesn't disappoint. Here's the first layer of inner packaging. Initial impressions, this figure is 9 3/8 inches tall, or about 23.8 centimeters, with the base being 1.5 centimeters of this. So they did hit that target height they were looking for. We did calculate about what scale she would be. In an official book, she's about 155 centimeters tall in her transformed form, and if this figure was standing straight up, we estimated her height to be about 22.5 centimeters without the base. This would be a 1/6.8 scale, which basically means you're getting a 1/7 scale. So far, I can only find one area of shading, which is in her clothes, but they did use several different paint finishes. I am fairly pleased with her sculpt overall, and she is very cute. So let's take a closer look. I'll start off by showing you the only area of shading on this figure, which is on the side of her knees, and that's it. Apparently they didn't think there was any other important area that needed shading, which is surprising since the standard pop-up parades had a lot more shading. I mean, Albedo had more shading in her boobs than this does on the entire figure, so it is disappointing to see. Moving on to the hair, it's a dark purple. If you take a look at the prototype photos, it's a much lighter purple, but if we look at her character in the anime, this is much more faithful. But I do think it would have benefited from either a light purple airbrushing on top or a dark airbrushing underneath to give it more depth. Her horns are painted with a sparkly gold, and the star points do look clean. For the face, it's extremely cute, and they did a really good job on all of her decals, which are going to be the eyebrows, the eyes, the stars, and the blush. For her mouth, her teeth are painted white, the tongue is a light pink color, and in order to make her mouth look more open, they actually painted the corners of her mouth a pinkish red, and it looks really good from straight on, but if you catch it at an off angle, it actually kind of looks like part of her face. So I kind of wish they would have left it skin tone because they already modeled the inside of her mouth. For the clues, we'll start with the largest part, which is the white silhouette of her dress. It looks like there's shading here, but this is simply a white airbrushing on top of a dark plastic, so we have thinner areas of white in the inside and thicker on the outside. I say this is unintentional because the prototype photos do not show these hues of purple, and it's not added in after the fact like we see on other scales. All of the leather pieces of her outfit are painted with a glossy purple, except for the wings of her necklace here. All of these pieces are also outlined in a sparkly gold paint, which is pretty clean with only a couple areas of paint bleeding, such as the side of her corset, the clasp, and the side of the sleeve here. There's not much skin to feel, but it doesn't feel super rough, but it's also not very soft, and there is a little bit of paint bleeding where her skin meets her shoe. One thing this figure does not have that it should is that her fingernails are supposed to be painted a dark purple color. For modeling, the sculpt is excellent. They did a really good job of reproducing her from 2D to 3D, and I essentially have nothing bad to say about it. As I said in the beginning, this is so far my favorite figure of her. Moving on to modeling quality, there are way less part lines and flashing than we saw in the stand-up pop-up parade. The only areas I can find with part lines are down the middle of each sleeve and on the sides of her hair. The hair is divided into 4 sections. We have the front, the middle, the back, and the little heart ahego. For the face, the biggest note of modeling is her mouth, and it looks like it's a separate piece because you can see the line around the edges, but it is modeled nicely. Unfortunately, her cute little fangs do have a lot of flashing. For the white areas of her dress, they did a good job with adding folds into the fabric from the poofy sleeves to the silhouette, but we do have some rough edges with flashing. All of the leather areas of her outfit look very tight, with wrinkles added in the appropriate places, such as her wrists, the side of her corset, where the clasp are, the hem of her pants, her knees, and the heels of her shoes. Her pasties are indented into her skin, and so if you were to try to force cast off her, I don't think you would find any nipples, but from the front, her nipples are implied. The clunkiest part of this figure is where her clasp are. The rope is supposed to be in an X pattern, but it essentially just looks like a very clunky rope, whereas other figures, such as the Kotobukiya, have given the rope a more defined X pattern. For her body, they've given her nice perky breast. There's an indentation to show the outline of her rib cage. She has a little belly button, and they've done a good job of modeling her V-lines. Her fingers are modeled well, and they also modeled her fingernails. For the base, hey, it looks like we've seen this already before, and it's just as thick as Albedo's. For Magia Baiser, we have these barely clear, very noticeable supports, so they did everything they could to make it even uglier. For artistry, as I said in the beginning, they did an extremely good job of going from 2D to 3D, and I feel like they really captured her essence. Her face is basically like the rim crystal dress to me, and that it's pretty much perfect. It's appropriately derpy, they got the angle of her eyes correct, she has her cute little fangs, and they even added blush. It's what really drew me to this figure, and she's definitely sadistically excited. For the pose, while they did add wrinkles in her clothes and movement in her hair and body positioning, it is just a generic fashion pose. I do think it's extremely cute, but I wish they would have made her pasties removable and given her her whip, since she is based off of such a lewd series. If I was a magical girl, I hope that she would come after me. With that, let's give her a score. Starting with the box, I do not like it as much as I like the regular Pop-Up Parade box, although I do think the contemporary design does look good. But without a window, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Moving Moving on to production, starting with the paint, there is a lot of line work and the majority of it is clean, and they used multiple types of paint finishes. But there is almost no shading on the figure at all, which definitely puts it below your average scale figure, and they did not paint her fingernails purple, so it gets a 6 out of 15. For modeling, there is some flashing and a few part lines, but the sculpt is excellent, so it gets a slightly above average score of a 9 out of 15. The base is exactly the same as Albedo's, at least they used a translucent plastic, so it gets a 2 out of 10. Moving on to artistry, under 2D versus 3D, they did an amazing job of capturing the character's essence, but I do think they should have added her whip in this form, and they did not paint her fingernails purple, so it gets a 9 out of 10. The pose has some movement, but at the end of the day it's just a generic fashion pose, so it gets an average score of a 5 out of 10. For the face, it's the best part about this figure and what really prompted me to order it. It's really captivating and has a lot of life, so it gets a 10 out of 10. For Moe, this figure is both lewd and cute, but we are missing a lot of the lewd with the pasties not being removable and her whip not being present. I feel like these elements would have added to the figure, but she is still very cute on her own, so it gets an 8 out of 10. Moving on to value, objectively this figure cost 8,800 yen and weighs 241 grams, giving her a yen per gram of 36.51, which is a 3 out of 5. Subjectively, I see more value in this because it is a licensed figure of a popular character for significantly less than the current going rate of scale figures, so she gets a 4 out of 5. For playability and displayability, while she does have a smaller base, her outfit ends up taking more space than the base, and I feel like she displays like an average figure, so she gets a 3 out of 5. This brings the total for the PUP Parade L Magia Baiser to a 61 out of 100. This brings the Magia Baiser to 18th place, behind the Beautiful Laffy but above the BearPanda Konata. If we instead filter by only production and artistry, she's now in 17th place, still behind the Laffy but now above the Yoshitoku Albedo. Overall, a much better showing for PUP Parade thus far. I too am pleased with the price I paid for this figure, and personally I'd rather buy one of the L's than two of the standard sizes any day of the week. So this definitely seems to be the sweet spot so far. Following the structure of the last video, we do want to give you guys a three-way comparison between a PUP Parade and two other figures within the same price range. Now, to preface, this is not really a fair comparison, nor do we consider it to be, because a PUP Parade is a licensed figure of a popular Japanese IP, whereas the other two figures we will be showcasing are from Chinese IPs and Doujin works. So they're really only competitors in the most basic sense of price. But you guys know that on this channel, we don't show you guys things just for filler, but instead everything is very intentional. We received big news at Wonderfest that one of our favorite new Chinese companies, BearPanda, has announced two 1/4 scales of Rei and Asuka from Evangelion. This is exciting because if you've never been to Japan, even though this anime is from the 90s, it's still very prevalent throughout the culture and advertising. This is also going to be the first popular Japanese IP that BearPanda has done a collaboration with, and so far all of their figures are still very affordable. We don't know about future pricing for these figures, and in all fairness, My Ethos did a collaboration with Evangelion, and it was on par with Japanese pricing. Although in recent years, all of their figures have been on par with Japanese pricing. AniMester also did a collaboration with Evangelion, which is also expensive, but at least it has a large diorama. So hopefully BearPanda can keep their pricing low. So what we're comparing here is more of a thought experiment. It might take a couple of years, but if Chinese companies are able to start releasing Japanese IPs sub 12,000 yen, then they can start to be real competitors to the PUP Parade Ls. An honorable mention of a competitor that we cannot showcase today considering not a single figure has released is the Tenitol Tall series. These figures are between 29 to 32 centimeters tall, which is closer to a 1/6 scale or possibly a 1/5 scale, depending on the real life height of the character. This series is also of popular Japanese IPs. One of the first ones to release is Albedo, and she's slated to release in May of this year. So far, all of them are priced at 10,450 yen, and given their size, this should yield a pretty good yen per gram ratio. But it is Furyu we're talking about here, so we have to manage our expectations. Based on previous experience, they could have subpar quality and not even be considered a competitor, considering how clean the PUP Parade L is. Let's take a look at two companies that are known for both their quality and value. We'll do a quick showcase of each figure and then put all three of them head to head in our same rating scale as last time. This is the Girls Frontline Florence by AniMester. She's a 1/7 scale with an MSRP of 8,800 yen, which just so happens to be the same MSRP as the Magia Baiser. Starting with the paint, let's highlight some of the areas of shading, which there are quite a lot of. For her hair, they did a dark blue airbrushing on the front and on the back. And there is a decal for her hairpins, which does look clean, but I wish they would have modeled them in. For her shirt, they did a black airbrushing in the wrinkles of the hood, on her sleeve, and on the front. For the skirt, there is no shading, but they used a translucent plastic that they airbrushed black on top, the top being darker than the bottom. But they did add some shading on the string here with a black airbrushing on each side. For her skin, there's a nice soft matte finish. For her stockings, there is black airbrushing on the top, middle, and bottom, and there's also some shading in the creases of her shoes. All of the line work is very clean, from the zippers to the buttons to the metal embellishments. Some of the pieces are added back in, and so that's why those are clean, such as the pill and the pom-poms on her shirt. They did paint her fingernails, which is a nice touch, and they used a sparkly paint for the bow on the present, the bell on her collar, and all of the metal pieces of her outfit. For modeling, there are no fitment issues since you don't have to attach anything to this figure except for the base. There are not too many seams, but you can see where there are two pieces of hair added back in here, where the pom-poms are added back in since there's a gap. There's a little bit of glue where the strings are added into the skirt, and a small seam on the translucent piece of her skirt as well. What I really like about this figure is the sculpt. There's a lot of movement going on here. I really like what they did with her hair and her clothes, particularly her skirt. We have the chubbiness of the thigh here. While the fingers are a little bit wonky, they did do a good job of modeling the bones in her hands and wrist, and they also did a good job with her collarbones and her chest. For such a small figure, there's a lot of movement going on here, and she's very high fashion. For the base, while it's your cheap plastic base, it at least has several design elements. It says Valentine's Day on the side and love on the top. I love the cute little bow. It's also very small and she balances very well, so she doesn't take up a lot of space. So it just goes to show you that it doesn't take much to make a solid base. For value, this figure costs 8,800 yen and weighs 212 grams, giving her a yen per gram of 41.51, which is a 3 out of 5. I am very pleased with the price that I paid for her, considering all of the attention to detail and shading that went into this figure. I definitely think that she can hold her own against many of the scales in our collection, and I have absolutely no qualms recommending her to someone else. Here we have Kodama's Succubus Lulumu by BearPanda. She's a 1/6 scale with an MSRP of 7,150 yen. For those of you that haven't watched it already, we actually already have an in-depth review of this figure and about BearPanda in general. So if you're interested in learning more, definitely check out the video. Because of which we're going to very quickly skim through the showcase. For paint, all of the lines are very clean because all of the pieces are added back in, except for a little bit of paint bleeding on the baby bottle. For shading, they've added a white highlight on the front of her hair, as well as on the back. They've added a black airbrushing onto the back of her tail, as well as the tip. She does have a nice soft matte finish for her skin, and they've added shading on her stockings to give her that sheer look. But the most egregious part of this figure is that the color-changing paint on her breast do not actually work. For modeling, there are quite a few fitment issues because she's extremely hard to assemble. We can also see that her pigtails don't quite fit in all the way. There are also a couple of tufts added back in. Her hairpiece also just likes to come apart. There are quite a few seams because, as I said earlier, there are a lot of pieces added back in. And so we have a seam of the ribbon here on her breast and on the side of her arm. We can also see where the bottom piece of her bikini was added back in. For the pose is definitely cute with her little chew pose. They've added a decent amount of movement with her hair and tail and the ribbon. The ribbon is very impressive because it's pretty much just one piece. They did a really good job of sculpting her body. She has cute little perky breasts, and I really like that they added a defined belly button. For the base, while I don't like the big round plastic part of it because I wish it was smaller, it at least has some geometry, and then we do have this cute little pillow that she's stepping into that does look very realistic. For value, this figure costs 7,150 yen and weighs 354 grams, giving her a yen per gram of 20.20, which is a 4 out of 5. $60 for a 1/6 scale is extremely good, and what we didn't show you is that she actually comes with an alternate face. So even though we were kinda gypped on some of the gimmicks we were promised, she's still an extremely good value. And as seen in our other video, she can hold her own against the other Lulumus, so I also have no problem recommending this figure. It's once again time for our three-way comparison, and we've chosen 6 categories to rate each figure. Each figure will get a ranking of first, second, or third in each category, and the figure with the lowest total score will be the winner. To preface this, we do not consider this a fair fight. You have one figure that's prioritizing a popular IP, and 2 figures that are prioritizing quality with cheaper IPs. For the sake of argument, and these are just made-up numbers, but let's say that each of these figures cost 10,000 yen each. But the licensing fee for the Pop-Up Parade is about 30% of the budget, whereas for the Chinese video game in the Dojin, it's maybe only 5%. Well, now all of a sudden, these 2 figures have 25% more of their budget to invest in quality, giving them the upper hand over the Pop-Up Parade. Now let's say you have 10,000 yen to spend, and you only care about price and quality. Then you can use this as a guide to help you decide. But reminder, we're using this more so as a thought experiment to what Pop-Up Parade could potentially be competing against in the future once these Chinese companies start obtaining popular Japanese IPs. For paint, the Pop-Up Parade only has shading on her knees, and that's it. They did use different types of paint finishes, and the line work is mostly clean. For the AniMester, we have a ton of shading on top of extremely clean line work. For the BearPanda, there's also a decent amount of shading. Most of the line work is clean because all of the pieces are added back in, but overall there is less shading than in the AniMester. So I'm going to give the AniMester first place, BearPanda second, and Pop-Up Parade third. For finish, we mean the quality and execution of the modeling. For the Pop-Up Parade, she's the only one that has noticeable part lines, and we can see them on her hair with some flashing and in the middle of her sleeves. For the AniMester, everything is very clean except a couple of pieces of hair added back in, and you can see a little bit of gap where the pom-poms are added back into her shirt. For the BearPanda, she has a ton of seams because pretty much all of the pieces are added back in, and she also has a handful of fitment issues. So I'm going to give the AniMester first place, followed by the Pop-Up Parade in second, and then the BearPanda in third. For details, we're looking at a combination of modeling and paint. For the Pop-Up Parade, we have a very elaborate outfit with a lot of different layers and clean line work. The AniMester has a ton of small details, such as the lacing in her skirt, the buttons, the zippers, and the little pill in her mouth. For the BearPanda, she's at a disadvantage because she's almost wearing nothing. It's not a particularly elaborate bikini, but the ribbon is nice. But I am going to give the AniMester first, followed by the Pop-Up Parade in second, and the BearPanda in third. For face, the Pop-Up Parade nailed Magia Baiser 100%, is extremely cute and what really drew me to this figure. For the AniMester, her face is still cute, but I feel like it's one of the many interpretations of what she can look like, because Florence can look very different depending on the figure and the artwork, and it just doesn't draw me in quite as much. For BearPanda, this is Lulumu straight out of the Dojin, and it's extremely cute, but I'm still going to give the win to the Pop-Up Parade in first, then BearPanda in second, and AniMester in third. For the base, with Pop-Up Parade, we're back to the transparent hockey puck, and that's it. For AniMester, this is a great example of how little effort it takes to make a unique and creative base and it not be oversized. For the BearPanda, I'm extremely conflicted because the pillow is very cute, but it's on top of this big, ugly plastic disc. So coming from a collector's point of view that owns a ton of figures, I personally prioritize the smaller, unique base because it means I can display her with a lot more figures. If the BearPanda base was just the pillow, this would be a completely different story, but I am going to give the AniMester first, followed by the BearPanda in second, and the Pop-Up Parade in third. For value, we have a mix of objective and subjective. Objectively, the Pop-Up Parade has a yen per gram of 36. The AniMester has a yen per gram of 41, and the BearPanda has a yen per gram of 20. Subjectively, the Pop-Up Parade has a better yen per gram than the AniMester, and it's also of a popular Japanese IP. The AniMester has the worst yen per gram, but objectively, it has the best quality out of all 3. The BearPanda has literally half the yen per gram that the AniMester does, so you're getting a lot for your value here, considering this is a 1/6 scale with an alternate face. So I'm going to give the BearPanda first place, And then because of the IP, I'm going to give the PUP Parade second place, followed by the AniMester in third. This brings the AniMester in first place with 10 points, and then we actually have a tie between the BearPanda and PUP Parade with 13 points each. This is a much closer race than I thought it was going to be, and a much better showing for PUP Parade. Between the three, if you value quality the most, then the AniMester won't disappoint. If you just really want a figure of your favorite Japanese IP, then the PUP Parade L is actually a pretty solid choice and easy to recommend. It seems to be a fair quality for the price, and it currently has no competition. If you prioritize a mix of quality and value, and you're looking for original Japanese characters, then BearPanda has a really good value proposition. If I had to choose only one, while I appreciate the quality of the AniMester and the value of the BearPanda, I'm personally just not super invested in these characters. As a collector, the face of the figure is extremely important to me, so if I line all these figures up side by side, the amazing job they did on Magia Baiser's face and how they nailed her character really draw me in and get me attached. I also just really like the character, and I've watched all of the anime, so I would actually pick the PUP Parade L. At the end of the day, I'm just really pleased that we have such amazing options under 10,000 yen. Competition is really good for this hobby, and it's an exciting future for collecting. Right now, PUP Parade L is a good value for popular Japanese IPs. But if Chinese companies were able to get their hands on these IPs, and even if they were slightly more expensive at 11 or 12,000 yen, I would still consider them a strong competitor. As a collector, I would rather pay a little bit more to achieve the scale quality we get from these Chinese companies. Especially considering that the average going rate is 24,447 yen for the most recent 50, 1/8, and 1/7 scale pre-orders on AmiAmi. Reminder, we'll be saving our aggregate conclusion for PUP Parade as a whole for our final video in this series, Part 3, where we will be doing a deep dive on the PUP Parade XL series, so subscribe to be notified when that releases. Reminder, this mini-series wouldn't be possible without Lonely Pillow. Dakimakura's once saved the owner's life, and now he's making them for all the lonely people out there, or those that just want a little something extra to cuddle. Lonely Pillow is an honest and transparent company that supports both traditional and AI artists, and has them clearly separated into two separate categories on their website, so you know who you're supporting. Kohai's collection takes a firm stance on supporting traditional artists only, and so we've negotiated a coupon code, Kohai Review, for 13% off traditional art doggies only. This does not take from the artist's royalty, the owner takes the hit. In return, you get to support traditional artists, and you gain a lovely waifu to cuddle with. It's nice because there are several versions for each cover, and they have both safe work and not safe work versions for almost all covers, for those of you that can't display all the goodies at home. Beside me is Chang Li from the artist Lami. She's the safe work version with the modified 2A tricot, and she's 160 centimeters in length. Thus, it feels very similar to the Japanese 2A tricot, though smoother and less stretchy. It's very soft and definitely the way to go. The not safe for work version is too spicy for YouTube, so check it out for yourself at lonely-pillow.com, and don't forget to use our coupon code Kohai Review for 13% off traditional art doggies. Well, until next time, senpai, bye!